Hello and welcome to DIY Marketing 2017 for Speakers. My name is Aidan Crawford, and some of you may remember me from various NSA conferences over the years where I stand by my booth all day dishing out free marketing advice and tips to speakers before spending my evenings at Cigar Peg. Also dishing out advice, but probably not as solid. This webinar is for speakers, trainers, and consultants who are experts in their field and want to figure out some ways to monetize that brilliance. And even if you are already a successful speaker, I'm sure you're going to get some great action items from this call, and it'll be worth way more than the time you're investing on it. So why should you listen to me anyway? Well, here's the elevator pitch I give to everybody. I was a full-time marketing director for a speaker in Toronto for 5 years. I now do that on a part-time basis for multiple speakers. So what I do is I come in, take the time to look at your business, help you figure out strategies, I help you implement those strategies, and then on a recurring basis, I generally take care of making sure all your marketing is working. So there I am, Short Circuit Media. As per NSA edict, there's my headshot that is at least 20 years old, but you probably recognize me more like that guy from the conferences. So I have been working with speakers for over 10 years. 5 years as a marketing director for Jim Clemmer up here in Canada, where I am located. I do give all my knowledge away for free. And so this comes to the final part, where why should you trust me? I will not try and sell you anything. So when I was younger, I worked at an indie record store, and when we heard an album that was great, it was described as all killa, no filla. So in keeping with that thinking, I want you to come away with some real implementable do-it-yourself marketing tips today. So this is going to be an all killa, no filla, no sella kind of presentation. And underscore that point, if you make it to the very end of this, I have no special offers or heavy discounts on products and services nobody ever pays full pop for anyway. So instead what you're going to get is a URL to a page containing links to resources that I talk about over the next 15 minutes or 45 minutes, including a slide deck and video of this webinar for you to share with all your speaking buddies, because that's really what I like to do. Get out there ahead of things. So let's go over the agenda quickly. It's exactly as it was advertised when you signed up. We're going to go through 5 different sections: defining your customer, making your case for value, how to create compelling content on a consistent basis, the hard way and the easy way, help you focus your social media strategy so you're not wasting your time. And finally, I'm going to say how you can create some products based on your expertise. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to sell any of them, but I will show you some cheap ways, I shouldn't say cheap, how about inexpensive ways to actually create some product so that you can actually test the market for what it is you're selling. So the first part of our presentation, the webinar, is defining your audience. Now, I've attended every summer and winter NSA conference since 2011, and I've literally had conversations with thousands of speakers. And here's a shocker: despite all the best year evers you might overhear in the halls, most speakers are struggling. And it's not because they aren't great speakers or they don't know their topic. It's because they never properly define an audience. So instead of having that focus to build strategies around, they're chasing after everything and catching nothing. So think about that. Now, the first thing you need to know is not everyone's your client. The successful speakers I talk to know this. The exception is celebrities. And I once had a client who actually described the speaking business as being made up of celebrities and the rest of us. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to assume that you're all in the rest of us camp. So the first thing you need to do when you're defining your audience is realize that there are other people out there who do what you do. Now, some of them are going to be better than you. And that's just the way it is. There's people that do what I do better than me. That's, you just got to face that reality. You're not going to be the best at what you do. So you need to figure out what you do and what you bring to the table that makes you different from all those other speakers, the ones that are better than you, the ones that are more successful than you, maybe the ones that are worse than you and are more successful than you. What makes you different? And how do you do that? Well, you have to figure out, based on your life experience, who is most likely to hire you. Now, that is one of the biggest things that speakers come across. They try not to they don't tend to leverage what they need to do or leverage their life experience for prospects. So you need to realize that if you've got the strategies for connecting with the right prospects based on your life experience, then it doesn't matter if there are people that are better than you because you're focused on a specific niche. Now, I had a client, or I didn't have a client. It was I was at a conference a few years ago. The one that was in the basement. It was a terrible conference for people that had a booth. And somebody came out to me and I said, "Oh, so what do you do?" It's like, "Well, I speak on leadership." It's like, "Oh, great. So, what is your background? Who do you speak to?" It's like, "Oh, well, I spent 20 years in the construction industry. I was in leadership in the construction industry." It's like, "Oh, so you speak to a construction audience and there's construction associations." And this person said, "Oh God, no, I hated construction. So I don't want to be the reason I became a speaker was to get out of the construction industry." So who do you speak to? Well, I can speak to anybody. There was I saw a big hole in her marketing plan right there. She had 20 years experience in the construction industry. So I told her, "You're not in the construction industry anymore. You're a speaker who services the construction industry. You have a knowledge of that industry that other speakers do not have." It was associations that deal with construction around the country and even around the world would be open to your message because you've got experience in their industry. You can relate to what their issues are. So if you create an elevator pitch that is specifically for construction industry that says, I know how leadership failures can destroy projects, and here's an example of one where here's how it destroyed this $1 billion project I worked on, and if they had just taken these steps, it would have been a completely different outcome. And you can craft a whole story around that's very inspiring to everybody in the audience, and it'll save them a lot of money. So that is probably the most important thing that you need to do. So throughout this little webinar, I'm actually going to have a number of action items. You don't have to stop. I'm going to be posting this video. You can go back and review it. You can look at the slide deck. So just listen right now. But what I want you to do is write down who your ideal client is based on your experience and what is your unique qualification to work with that client. So this is the very essence of your speaking business. Who do you want to work for, and why? What makes you uniquely qualified to work for that client? What separates you from every other speaker in the world that client needs to hire you? The next part, after you've figured out who your ideal clients are, is actually making the case for value to those clients. Now, what you know is only worth something if you can convince somebody to pay you for it. There was a guy who came out to me in Anaheim, a speaker, and he was an expert in, I believe it was President Lincoln. He was an expert on President Lincoln. His whole thing was everybody should know the lessons that Lincoln taught us are applicable to business and they're applicable to everything. Everybody should know about Lincoln. I said, okay, great. So who hires you? He's like, "Oh, nobody really hires me yet, but they should." And it's like, "Well, why should they hire you?" It's like, "Well, everybody needs more Lincoln." It's like, "Well, I'm not going to argue against you that everybody needs to know more about President Lincoln, but isn't that a civics lesson? People don't pay for civics lessons. You've got to make a case for why the lessons that Lincoln tells us will make their business better." So what he did was, I actually bumped into him last year in Phoenix, and we were talking about it, and I said, this has been vexing me since 2011, since the first time we met, that I couldn't help you that first time because you were so stuck on everybody needs to know, I just want to talk about Lincoln. So we chatted a bit more, and we came to a conclusion that the lesson that Lincoln, the actual lesson that he wanted to get across was on servant leadership. So we shifted his thinking so that now instead of talking about Lincoln and pitching himself as the guy who's the Lincoln expert, he speaks on servant leadership and uses Lincoln as the prime example of how those strategies and the philosophy of servant leadership can actually work for the greater good and how that can be translated to business. So then he's actually kind of shown that there's a value in his knowledge beyond just something academic. Now, just because you have a rich client doesn't mean they want to burn their money and piss it all away. So the question that I always ask people when they come up to my booth, and I say, so what do you do? It's like, oh, I do this, this, this. So the big question I ask is, why should a client pay you $10,000 to speak? Now, as soon as I say that, their eyes glaze over because they hear the $10,000, but it's just an arbitrary number I picked out. It's the same if it's $1,000 or $40,000. People need to find out, you need to be able to justify why you're worth a certain amount of money. Now, I wrote a post about this last year and posted it to LinkedIn, and to date it's my most popular, it's the most popular thing I've ever scribbled. And it came out of a discussion I had with some speakers in Indianapolis a few years back. These people were all very smart, but they weren't working nearly enough or charging enough for what they did. Your expertise does not equal work. Your job is as much about much more than platform skills. You need to create a narrative that shows prospective clients an ROI. Now, one of the discussions I had, there was a speaker came up to me, and he said, and I said, oh, so what do you do? And his answer to me was, I'm the communicator. It's like, well, that doesn't really tell me anything. What do you do? Well, I teach salespeople how to communicate better so they'll sell more. I said, oh, okay. Now, if you're listening to this, you probably go, okay, I get that, but it doesn't seem very exciting. So I helped him create a little bit of a narrative right on the spot. We had 5 minutes. It's like, okay, let's see if we can figure out how to make your pitch a little bit stronger. And I said, if you go up to a manager or a director and say, every sales team has that guy or that gal who goes into a room, knows what to say, can connect with people right away, and they're your top performer. What I do is I turn every person on your sales team into that person. Everybody becomes the top performer. Now imagine the ROI if everybody was performing at the level of your top performing salesperson. Which brings me to my point. What is the return investment for clients? What do they get from working with you? What is the return on investment? And if you can create a narrative, that's great. Because what you do needs to show them that $10,000 is not an expense. It's actually it's an investment. So to do that, you can find some numbers. So you create a narrative, find some numbers. And I would say if you can come up with something that says organizations that employ the strategies and concepts similar to those I speak about are X times more profitable than their competitors, then you're actually going a long way to making a case for your value. Now, you don't need to they don't have to be your numbers. The numbers are out there. What you do is you have to know if you talk about absenteeism, if what you talk about reduces absenteeism or employee turnover or project overruns or executive failures, you can find statistics that say the cost to companies from absenteeism is such and such. What I do when I speak to people, it reduces absenteeism. So even if we reduce absenteeism by 3%, what we're doing is going to save you, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. All of a sudden, that 10 grand you just asked for doesn't seem like very much at all. So if you put it into that perspective, you're actually, that $10,000 is a bargain. That $40,000 is a bargain if it's a Fortune 500 company and they're experiencing 15% people calling in sick every day. So here's some action items for this part. Rewrite your elevator pitch to position your services as an investment and not an expenditure. So you won't be able to do this like in 2 seconds. Just think about it for a couple of days, write it, rewrite it again until what your pitch to clients is something more than you should pay me this much money, because you're asking for money for nothing based on them hoping that something's going to happen. I want you to rewrite your elevator pitch to say, if you hire me, these are the outcomes, and this is the money you will save, this is the money you will make. Now, to do that, I also want you to find 4 sets of statistics to back up that value proposition. So you're going to make your pitch and back up your pitch. And as I said at the beginning of this, I'm doing this all out of the goodness of my heart. It's all totally free. If you write this and send it to me, I will look at it and give you some pointers on it. So my email address, aiden@shortcircuitmedia.com. When you go to my site, you'll be able to find me very easily. Write the pitch, send it to me. I'll look at the pitch, send it back to you, give you some notes. You'll be doing an amazing. You should be able to do a great pitch in a couple days, and that would, along with identifying your key audience, this alone should be able to boost your business this year. The next part is actually creating great content on a consistent basis, and I'm terrible at this. I'm going to admit. What I do is I work with clients all the time. So me writing blogs, if you go to my site, the last blog I posted was before Christmas. It's terrible. This is the Dr. Heal Thyself kind of problem. I know that creating content can be a real pain, but it's part of your job. Fresh content on your site tells visitors, first of all, you're still in business. If you go to a site and the copyright says 2011 and it doesn't look like it's been updated in 6 years, you move on. So the trick is to learn some strategies that are going to help you create that content, but won't keep you from going out and looking for work as a speaker or consultant. Now, we all know, you've heard over and over again, why you should be blogging, why you should be creating content. Blog content's good for SEO. It builds your credibility within your market. It becomes a basis for your monthly newsletter, and it can even be the basis for your books. Now, notice I didn't say podcasting in here. Everybody gets all excited by podcasting because it was the shiny new thing. Everyone wants to podcast. Focus on just writing some good content. Get into podcasting when you've got a following. You don't want to start creating do podcast for the love of it. Don't do podcast because you think it's going to help you very much. So the third point there, where I talk about the monthly newsletter, what we do is we actually have a strategy that I employ with my different clients, where we write blogs for them twice a week, and so we write blogs for them twice a week based on stuff they send us, or their books, or different content sources. And then at the end of the month, we turn that blog into a newsletter. So there's 8 blogs that go out on a monthly basis. We have the intro to 8 blogs, so we drive people back to their website. But then between each one of those kind of intros, we would have promotions for their books, or for their speaking, or for their consulting. So that we would call it, if it was the free newspaper you get on Fridays, you call it Flyer Wrap, right? It's the weekly newspaper that lands on your door on a Friday morning, or Friday afternoon, or Thursday afternoon, and it's filled with flyers. And really, it's just flyer wrap. So you think of your e-newsletter as flyer wrap. You're creating the content. The content's the bait, but really what you're doing is you're doing it to get the content out there, get people's eyes on the products you're trying to move, or the services you're trying to sell. So where do you get the content? So there's a hard way. There's an easy way. The hard way: create everything yourself from scratch twice a week. That is a murderously torturous way to do things. What you do is you open up your Microsoft Word, you stare at your empty screen and go, I've got to fill 300 words twice a week. You take a deep breath, have a coffee, put on the laundry, make another coffee. It's tough. It's really hard. The easy way: curate content on social media, contribute to the discussion, cannibalize your existing books, transcribe your presentations. Now let me just go through those. So when I say curate content on social media, you can set up Google Alerts, and the Google Alerts will send you articles daily about things that are of interest to your clients. So what you can do, I use Google Alerts plus Buffer app. So again, you don't have to write this down. All the links are going to be on the page that you get at the end of the webinar. So you get the Buffer app, and so on a Monday morning, I'll have my coffee. Google Alerts has sent me all these great articles that my clients would be interested in. And I can sit there on Buffer app and I can buffer them out. So what Buffer does is it will schedule those articles to be tweeted out as many times as I want. So I usually do it 3 times a day. So 3 times a day, an article gets sent out that's about marketing. I'm tweeting out these great articles on marketing. So I look very active on Twitter and LinkedIn, but it's Monday morning, I'm having my coffee and I'm taking care of all my social media within a couple of hours, within 15-20 minutes. So I'm not wasting too much time on it. The second way is to contribute to the discussion using, again, the Google Alerts. So if you get a Google Alert on an article that says, from Forbes, that's on, 5 leadership things that are undercutting performance in sales teams. You can write an article that says, I read this great article on Forbes, link back to the original article, that says this, put out the 5 points, and then you add to the discussion by saying, I found working with sales teams that while these 4 things are great, these other additional steps that I do will also help reinforce a culture of a positive sales culture and increases profitability. So you're actually using an article as a launching point to talk about the stuff that you talk about. So I've done this. I've got a client in Chicago where twice a week he sends us a whole bunch of articles that he finds on Google Alerts, and we do that twice a week. So we've produced well over 300 articles in the last couple of years on his blog, and it's all based on these kind of Google Alerts, and it's an amazing kind of way where it's the simplest way to keep your content funnel full. So that's one way to do it. The next way to do it is books. If you've already written a book and it's 109 pages long or 100 pages long, what you do is you take parts of that book and you give them a slight rewrite as a blog. So if you've got a 109-page book and there's probably, I'm going to say 70 really good points in that book, you've got 70 blogs right out of that book. Now people go, well, but I want to sell that book. Well, do you want to sell that book or do you want to get hired as a speaker? Because I can tell you right now, you need to sell an awful lot of books to make up for one $10,000 gig. So start cannibalizing the content that's out there. Now another thing you can do is you can actually transcribe your presentations. If you've got 5 or 6 speeches and you've had them recorded over the last couple of years, you can go to a service like Upwork.com and have them transcribed, which is what I do for my clients. So what we do is we transcribe their presentations, and then we use those transcriptions as the basis to write blogs from. So we can usually get 4 or 5 blogs per transcription, which is great. Another thing you can do is you can take those 5 or 6 speeches, because they're all in the same general area if you're focused enough, and you can turn those 5 or 6 transcriptions into a book. So again, you give them a light rewrite. Now what I did was, I have a client that we did this for, where we transcribed some presentations. I was the entertainment editor at my student newspaper in college a million years ago. I went back to my student newspaper. It's a daily newspaper, so I know that these guys are used to pumping out content. And what I did was, I reached out to this year, or 2 years ago, I reached out to the ed board there, and I said, I'd like to hire some of your editors to help me do some stuff. So I got these great people that can do content, know content, to edit these transcriptions and bookify them. And so I ended up with the editor-in-chief. And, I am totally against unpaid internships. I believe I'm a writer. I remember being a starving writer. And so when I hire a writer, they get paid. So, but just to get their foot in the door, they don't need to get paid a lot. So I had somebody rewrite these transcriptions, and I believe it cost me about $700. So I was able to create a book for $700 for a client. So if you're willing to do the transcriptions, have it edited properly, and then reread it yourself and get it and make final tweaks, you can use a service like CreateSpace, and you can get a book up there too out of your transcriptions. But again, in this part here, it's creating the content on a consistent basis. First of all, use those transcriptions to create a blog. Now, here's your action items. Now, when you create a blog, what you might have, what a lot of people do forget is that they'll create it, they'll leave it on their website, and that's it, and they forget about it. So when you create content and you don't do anything with it, it's wasted opportunities. Every post you create should automatically go out to social media channels through Hootsuite or even the Jetpack plugin on Facebook. The best practice I've developed for clients is to post one blog a week to LinkedIn's publisher platform. And the reason I do that is because everybody you're networked with in LinkedIn will get a notification that you've published an article. Now, if you collect LinkedIn connections like baseball cards, that might not be, it may not help you very much. But if you're good at actually connecting with decision makers in the industry that you want to hire you, then this is really going to help your credibility just publishing it to LinkedIn. Because they're not going to go to your website on a regular basis looking for content. But if you're putting it out there on LinkedIn and they're getting a notification that Joe Blow published an article on leadership in the construction industry, they're going to click on it and read it and share it. So that's an important thing for you to do. Now, I also encourage you, I mentioned the Jetpack plugin down here for automatic posting to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. But there's also another plugin that that's a free plugin. There's a paid version of it too. It's called Revive Old Posts. And what it does is it will take your blog and it will recirculate your older posts back into social media. So I just did some work for Ed Rigsby from CigarPeg just recently, just finished his website. And what we did was we put in Revive Old Posts and we scheduled it, because Ed's got hundreds and hundreds of articles, to send out an article every 4 hours to Twitter. And so he's got it, and it'll take over a month for those articles to actually circulate through. And Revive Old Posts will create hashtags out of the categories. His content is now being recirculated. Our articles he wrote that are green articles, that are timeless, because that's the way he writes his articles on purpose, are now being circulated. Even though he's written them, 3 or 4 years ago, they're still going out there. So Revive Old Posts. Again, that link will be at the end of the presentation. So this brings us talking about sending things to Twitter. Let's focus on your social media strategy. Are you wasting your time on social media? I'm going to tell you that most of the time you are. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I've seen people attend social media seminars and come out excited to get themselves on just about every platform that's out there. So they spend weeks setting up accounts on Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, whatever, and then they don't do anything with them, or they spend months trying to get a following with absolutely no success. So that is something that happens a lot. I'm going to be a contrarian on this, and I'm going to say, you don't need to be on every platform. My mom does not care about my job. So you need to focus your social media strategy. Does your mom care about your job? Do your college buddies care about your job? Does the rest of your family care about your job? Don't annoy your college buddies by sending your work stuff and these great articles you write on leadership or whatever to Facebook, your Facebook personal page. You don't want your family to block you. Facebook is great for B2C. Now I'm going to tell you a quick story about a guy that I went to high school with who actually wanted to connect with me on Facebook about 5 or 6 years ago. And I said, sure. I didn't know him very well in high school, but he wanted to connect, so sure, whatever. Within 5 or 6 minutes, I started getting a whole bunch of crap on my Facebook feed about his banquet hall. So Is that, I didn't care about his banquet hall. He was using Facebook to spam me with crap about a service I was not interested in. So all of a sudden he went from being a high school person that I was kind of curious to see what he was up to some annoying guy who I haven't seen in 20 years, who wants me to just start buying his crap on off of Facebook. So I actually prefer LinkedIn and Twitter as my key B2B channels. So, and the reason I do that is because I believe it's good to play in the same sandbox where your prospects or your prospective clients are playing. So, if you want to connect with directors and CEOs and bureaus, you really want to get on. You want to connect with these people on LinkedIn. Bring them into your network on LinkedIn, and then start giving them reasons to hire you. Twitter, if you can do what you do is you can do Twitter and hashtag everything properly, and send out messages that are going to be seen by people who might want to hire you for different things. Twitter is great that way as well, especially if you're using the revival posts and you're writing content that people care about. And it's not content necessarily that that is based on your subject, but it's content that the people that are going to hire you would be interested in reading. Because if you're just writing about me, people don't care about that either. Now, there's a couple ways that you can advertise, or you can do social media. You get what you pay for. And with social media, the currency can be either time or money. Now, you can take all that great content that we've just talked about, and you can get it out there as bait, or you can buy some ads and bring your traffic in that way. So I've got a quick story about Twitter ads. When they first started a few years back, I did some experimenting. And I created an ad that was only seen by people who follow at NSA Speaker and at Speaker Magazine. So basically the two National Speakers Association handles. So basically speakers. Who else is going to follow the NSA? And I created this ad saying that, I did speaker services, blah, 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 blah. And within 24 hours, I had 2 new clients. One of them is a retainer client who is still with me a few years later, so it pays me on a monthly basis. And the second one was just a website, so I built a website for them. That ad buy cost me $60. That is the best $60 I have ever spent on anything, Twitter ads. So how does that work for speakers? Let's say you speak to the insurance industry. That's who you speak to. You can create an ad that is only seen by the people that follow the handle the insurance industry of California, or at insurance leadership, or at insurance management. Like if there's an association of insurance managers or insurance directors or anything like that, or even CEO, at CEO association, if there's one of those. And they're the only people that are going to see your ad. So you can create an ad, send them back to a landing page that's specific to that industry that you want to speak at, where you can actually pitch specific services based on who is seeing that ad. Doesn't take brains. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to do that. All you're doing is you're reaching out to a very specific audience and driving them to a page that addresses that very specific audience. So you're not just sending them back to your homepage, sending them back to a nice little landing page with what do I do for CEOs, or what do I do for the insurance industry? What do I do for whatever industry? So Twitter ads, brilliant. I encourage everybody, invest the $60, try a Twitter ad. Now, another way that I've used Twitter, and you may not have even noticed this, I'm actually I'm using Twitter right now. So I'm actually live tweeting this presentation. So how did I do that? Well, last night, or 2 days ago, I sat down with Google Spreadsheet and I wrote out 10 tweets based on this presentation. And I scheduled them on Hootsuite. So I've got so it says live tweet, and I'm tweeting out salient points from this presentation every 5 minutes for this hour. with the hashtag DIY marketing and the hashtag NSA17. So because I'm doing it for speakers. So if you actually go to Twitter right now and you go, hey, hashtag DIY marketing, you'll see all my tweets for the last 2 days that are really promoting this and sending you to different resources, and it's a very powerful tool. So I really like how versatile Twitter is for getting my message out there. It's also very good for people who want to live tweet their speeches. So what I do is I tell my clients, if you're speaking at an event, what you need to do is live tweet your event, because nobody wants you to be selling from the stage. So what we do is I say we create tweets for your speech going before and after and during. So there's a live tweet section where during your speech we've got your salient points that are going out every 5 minutes that are hashtagged with the event hashtag. Before it, we're leading up to it, we mention other people, very general stuff. Afterwards, it's like, hey, if you like Joe Blow's speech, why don't you bring me in to speak to your company? This is really effective if the audience is filled with your prospective clients. So you're not actually selling from the stage. You're saying, hey, it was great to speak at such and such association today. If you want me to speak to your company, here, and send them to a landing page where they can hire you to speak at their company. So turn everybody who's in that audience into prospective clients. Another thing you can do is you can go, during my presentation I mentioned my book. Here's the link to my book, so on Amazon, so you can buy it. That'll save you from humping around a big box of books. They can just buy the book right from Amazon with one click from their phone. That's the way you can use Twitter effectively while you're speaking. Another pro tip, if you're using Google Ads. So when I was in, I want to say it was Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Winter Convention, I bought an AdWord for the event. So whenever somebody searched for NSA Las Vegas 2015 or 2014, whatever it was, and my ad would pop up at the top, and it would refer them. It's like, hey, Short Circuit Media is at NSA Las Vegas. Come to the booth. Here's a link to the landing page where I had like a whole bunch of information about what I was doing at the conference. Again, this works for you because you could have the same ad. Did you see, if you buy the ad for whatever association you're in, the word, so that when you're speaking, if somebody's looking for like the schedule for whatever conference you're at and they're just typing it into Google, your ad comes up and says, did you see so-and-so speak at 1 o'clock? Book her for your event. And again, drive them to a landing page. Make everybody, when you speak, think of everybody in the audience, that there's prospective clients in there, and use tools like Google and Twitter to turn those prospective clients into actually paying clients. So the final part of this presentation is actually on using your knowledge to create products. Now this one here is one of the things that I think is great. There's been a great democratization in the way that this has evolved over the last couple of years. I'm going to assume that you know your stuff and that you probably dream about the day when you can use your expertise to create passive income. The good news is that it's more economical than ever to do it. Bad news is your products are now going to compete against those, just about everybody else. So the fantasy is you'll create your online course or book and you'll wait for the money to come in. The reality is most people, I'm going to guess most people on this webinar, don't have the following to make that happen. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. Now, what I've done, I've actually created a course. Again, I'm not promoting it or anything. It's just courses at shortcircuitmedia.com. And it's based on this presentation. Or this presentation is actually based on that course. So it's all broken down the exact same way. So I created it using something from Fly Plugins called WP Courseware. It cost $99 and I got a license for 2 sites. And what it does, it allows you to put videos and attachments and quizzes before people move on. You can connect it to WooCommerce and charge people money for it. It integrates really sweetly. So you can say, hey, so if you really want to put a course, and any of your any of your platform presentations that are constructed in a logical way, you can create an online course out of. So if it's split up into four, if you can create your presentation into 4 distinct parts, you could have a four-part course on executive leadership, where you talk about different things. So introduction to executive leadership, leadership of management, leadership of people below it, whatever, however you want to break it up. And you can do a video of 10 or 15 minutes for each one of those, along with some supplemental downloads if you want to pull some of the articles from your blog and create PDFs out of them that people can download, and then give them a quiz that they have to answer before they move on to the next level to give them a bit of accountability. You can create courseware for $99. Now, I also used, when I did my course, and pop over to courses.shortcircuitmedia.com if you want to have a look. I used all my videos were created using a green screen from Amazon. I used my iPhone to record it. I got a microphone from Amazon, and I used a video app on my phone called TouchCast. So that's how I did that. I also had an explainer video made up. I went to Fiverr.com and I wrote a script, and I had an explainer video made up about why people should do it as a promotion. So that's actually on the homepage of courses.shortcircuitmedia.com. Now, another thing that I talked about earlier was transcribing your speeches to write a book. So again, transcribe the speeches, give them a slight rewrite, polish them into a narrative, and then publish it on CreateSpace.com. CreateSpace is owned by Amazon. It doesn't cost you anything to put your book up there, and it can distribute it around the world. So people can. So when you're speaking, you can always say you can tweet out the link to your CreateSpace page to people to buy that book. So again, you're not humping around a box of books and trying to sell them at the back of the room. Because listen, if you're at the back of the room and there's a lineup of 20 people to buy your books, 10 of them are going to go, well, I'm not going to wait in this line, or I'm going to come back later. And then there's all the other people that look at the line and say, I'm not going to stand in that line anyway, and they leave. But if you make it so that there's a link that they're just going to get on their phone and they can just buy it, do that. Even, and this is a secret bonus tip that I tell everybody, create some cards on Vistaprint that are like postcards on Vistaprint with a QR code or a small link, a shortened link to your Amazon page, and put them on all the seats before you go to speak. People are going to be playing with their phones anyway while you speak. You might as well have them buying your book or buying your course. You can do it for whatever you're selling. That's it. And as I promised, there are no special deals and there are no pitches for my service. People either need me or they don't. And that's it. I do have a special page with links to the resources I mentioned, including the video of this presentation. The video should be up on Thursday morning. Again, it's shortcircuitmedia.com/NSACT. I'd like to thank the folks at the Connecticut chapter for inviting me in to speak. And if you would like me to speak to your chapter and do the same presentation, hey, reach out, Aiden@shortcircuitmedia.com. I would love to get the opportunity to talk to your guys as well.